Hello, and welcome to your Urban Connection. And remember, this is the channel that is often imitated, but is never duplicated. Now, today, I want to talk to you about an issue that I've talked to you about before, and that was the Kansas African American Affairs Commission. And since I last talked to you, they've had an internal audit by the state legislature post-op audit committee. And I want to talk to you about the results of that audit. But before I do that, let me just remind you quickly that this segment of the program is being sponsored by the Sherry Nicole Cheesecake Boutique. That's the Sherry's Nicole's Cheesecake Boutique. Okay, now tonight I'm very honored to have a special guest on my show to talk about this audit and the results of the audit for the Kansas African American Affairs Commission. So let me bring in my guest, Mr. Glenn Cassis. He is a former executive director for the Connecticut African American Affairs Commission, which was one of the best, if not the best, in the country. And Mr. Cassis, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming. And I want to tell you why I've invited you on, sir. I have immense respect for your knowledge, for your experience, and for your expertise when it comes to issues dealing with African Americans throughout the country. I'm not going to say the state, but throughout the country. And your state, Connecticut, was once considered one of the, if not the best in the country. So I appreciate you coming and taking the time to join me tonight for this issue. Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Cassis, you have been, I won't say involved, but you've been somewhat knowledgeable about the Kansas African American Affairs Commission for a few years now. Is that correct?
Yes, largely from the information you've provided to me and what I've been able to look on my own on the website and other things like that. Yes.
Okay. And how long have you been involved, indirectly or directly, with African American Affairs commissions?
Wow. Well, I was the director here in Connecticut, the executive director for over 10 years, or for 10 years. Prior to that, I had some connection with the commission before I actually became the executive director. So I'd probably say about 12, 13 years involvement.
Okay. All right. So you've had an ample amount of experience. So I want to ask you a couple of questions, sir, before we really get into this audit. Have you ever been involved with, and I know it's a part of your executive director's experience, but have you ever seen an African American Affairs Commission that never issued any weekly, bi-weekly, biannually, or annual reports to the state legislatures or to the public regarding their financial status, regarding their benefits that they have provided for the states that they are involved with? Have you ever seen anything like that?
Well, let me say this. Here in Connecticut, we had more than just the African American Affairs Commission. We had a Latino Affairs Commission. We also had women's and children, and we were basically mandated to have reports. Our commission, we met monthly, except perhaps in the month of August. Each month we had reports that were generated by the staff, by myself. So we always had monthly reports which documented the activities and that we were involved with, my schedule of things that we're involved with, and various outreach programs we've had with not only the legislature, but also with community-based organizations throughout the state. Now, other commissions I've had, we had a network of other commissions throughout the country, and they had reports that were annual reports and in some cases semi-annual reports. So the commissions were pretty much mandated to produce reports for their state legislature. So we oftentimes had, well, all the time had reports.
Okay. And basically those reports were what held you accountable, and you had oversight that you provided this information to the public and, like I said, to the state legislature. In this particular case, sir, there has not been any oversight for this commission for the last 14 or 15 years. As such, there's no accountability. There, the governor, the state legislature, nor the public, as we speak today, and for the last 14 years, has not gotten any regular written reports outlining and stating what their obligation was, what their objective was, what they were providing, what benefits were being provided, the status of the finances. None of that has been made available, not even to the governor, nor the governor's chief of staff. You know, I mean, how can you run an effective organization when you're in violation of the complete state statute? You offer no reports, there's no oversight, and as we'll get into once we talk about this audit, you've got an executive director that is doing things without the knowledge of even the commissioners. I mean, you know, does this make sense to you?
Well, the way you stated it, it's kind of difficult to get a grasp on it. I can tell you this, even the fact that we did annual reports and I reported back to my commissioners monthly, it oftentimes was still a challenge to get that information into the hands of the community because there's so many other things that are out there. Having so you know, it's a challenge for folks to understand what you're doing, even if you are putting reports together and things like that. If you have nothing, that makes it even worse, I think, in terms of getting your message across. So it's a challenge, and if you're not producing reports, and it makes it even more difficult. Now the age of when we were early on, when I was involved with the commission, we depended a lot on paper reports to get disseminated, mailed out and things like that. As we in later years, we were able to electronically transmit those reports and have it those reports on our website, which made it a little easier to get the information. But even then, it's a challenge to get that information in the hands of people. So not having anything written or electronically disseminated probably makes it nearly almost impossible, for people to understand what you're doing.
Yes. Okay. Now, when I'm looking here at this audit, this was, I wanted the people to know, this was a limited audit. I would have preferred a full-blown audit of everything involving, but this was requested by a member of the legislature, and he, I guess, didn't fully quite understand the scope of what he was going to get. But basically, I'll just read to you what he asked for. It said, our audit objective was to answer the following question. 1, did the Kansas African American Affairs Commission comply with key legal requirements and make appropriate expenditures last year? Okay. It says, to answer whether the commission complied with key legal requirements, we reviewed relevant policies, bylaws, and meeting minutes from January 2022 through June of 2023. We reviewed news, information, and social media events to understand the commission's initiatives and activities. We also interviewed the executive director and several commissioners. Now, sir, when I read this report, when it's completed, one word pops into my mind. And I don't know if you would agree with this or not, but that word is dysfunctional. When you read this report, as we're going to go through here, and we'll see what these people, what the audit concluded, it says the Legislative Post-Audit Committee rules require us to report when an agency fails to respond to a recommendation or responds negatively. The Commission's executive director rejected our recommendation to provide training on travel expenditures. We conducted this performance audit in accordance with generally accepted government auditing standards. Those standards require that we plan and perform the audit to obtain sufficient, appropriate evidence to provide a reasonable basis for our findings and conclusions based on our staff objectives. Overall, we believe the evidence obtained provides a reasonable basis for our findings and conclusions based on those audited objectives. Now, so now we get into some of the things they looked into and what they found, sir. And I was not surprised. I'm going to be honest with you. I was not surprised because I have been saying before, and I've done podcasts here, stating that basically this group would not be able to pass this audit because of the fact they had done nothing for the last several years. I mean, nothing. No benefits have been provided to African Americans throughout the state. No reports have been provided. None of the things that are included in the state statute are being performed. So how in the world can you pass muster with an audit when you have nothing to show for your efforts? And the big problem that I have, sir, is these are taxpayers' dollars. And the taxpayers are being taken for a ride here. And this is all in the knowledge of the governor and the governor's chief of staff, and they are okay with it. Now that brings me to the issue of experience, and you either have it or you don't. Knowledge, you either have it or you don't. So I have, and I'm sure you know this, I have offered your expertise and your services to the governor and to the executive director and to the secretary of appointments on 3 different occasions. And they've rejected me on 3 different occasions, all the while knowing that they didn't have 1 ounce of iota of knowledge about how to effectively run the Kansas African American Affairs Commission. So let's get into this now. It says Kansas African American Affairs Commission is a liaison office within the governor's office, and its fiscal year 2022 expenditures were about $130,000. Now, sir, I don't know about you, but of this 130,000, only 110,000 was in their budget. The other 20,000 came from a grant that they received.
Right.
But can you, in good conscience, can you understand how a organization of 7 commissioners and an executive director in a state the size of Kansas with over 165,000 African Americans statewide, how they can efficiently and effectively operate on a budget of $110,000 when about 60 to 70,000 of that is going for the salary of the executive director?
It's a challenge. What I would say, and again, the audit didn't get into it deeply, but after reviewing the audit and looking at the other material, the website and things like that, this commission is, as far as I'm concerned, is under-resourced. It just doesn't have the resources to make an effective impact based on the criteria that's been established for it to do. It just doesn't have the resources, doesn't have the staff, doesn't have the financial input, just doesn't have the things that are necessary for it to be a successful commission, in my opinion.
Well, I share that opinion with you, sir. And basically, I've stated before on at least 2 of the 3 podcasts that I've done, is the fact that, number 1, this commission is underfunded. Number 2, it's understaffed. And number 3, it has no other alternative except to be underperforming. And that just makes common sense. And there again, I say the governor knows this. Now, in 1997, when this was first approved and signed into law by a former Republican governor, the annual budget was $250,000, and there were 3 staff employees. All right. So that's 1997, 250,000. Here we are in 2023. And you're talking about a budget of $110,000? I mean, there is no way they intend for this to work. They don't intend for this to be effective as far as the blacks. To me, it says a hell of a lot about how our Democratic governor feels about and thinks about the African Americans in the state of Kansas. All right, let's move on. Okay, the commission's expenditures in fiscal 2022 were nearly $130,000. Figure number one shows expenditures by category. As the figure shows, salaries and benefits made up almost 2/3 of those costs. The commission's other largest spending categories were for other contractual services, which includes things like fees for professional services and training, conference registrations, communication, and computers and rent. So basically, what you have there is when it's all added up, sir, you probably have less than $20,000 to implement any type of programs that would benefit African Americans throughout the state, and that would be reaching probably maybe 1/3. Now, let me give an example.
Well, and also there's a certain part that comes through a grant from one of the, I guess, the Health Commission, or one of the grants that they received is used also. So it's not say part of that budget is grant money.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Well, okay, so they got one grant.
Yeah.
That grant was, I believe, $50,000, and they got that in 2022.
Right, it's continuing. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Now, yeah, here it is. So the commission's fiscal year 22 and 23 included general funds, but also portions of a $50,000 Kansas Health Foundation grant.
Right.
Okay, that's one grant they had. The Kansas Health Foundation provided a $50,000 grant to the commission in December of 21. According to the foundation's information, the grant money is supposed to be used to increase capacity and rebuild infrastructure that will help identify clearer goals and increase community outreach. Now, what was spent for that?
Yeah.
There's been no outreach. There's been no infrastructure. Okay, you didn't use that money to hire any additional staff. So what did you do? How did the African Americans benefit from this grant? They haven't. As shown in Figure 1, the Commissioner's fiscal year 22 expenditures were nearly $130,000. Of that amount, about $110,600 was the state general funding. The remaining, which came from what was left from the Kansas Foundation grant.
Right.
All right. Now, we move on and we talk about the Commission and its executive director are required to meet various statutory requirements and bylaws to accomplish their mission. The Commission's mission is to be representative for programs, research, and policy advice to state and local agencies to address concerns of the African American community in Kansas. There again, that's a part of the state statute. None of that is being done. If you're not following the state statute, sir, let me ask you, if you don't have a plan and you don't follow a plan, it's just like if you're running a business. If you don't have a business plan, you're not going to be in business very long. Okay? And basically what these people fail to understand, that state statute roadmap for you to go from point A to point B successfully and effectively and efficiently. And when you stop utilizing that state statute, you're going to get off the track. And a train doesn't run very well when it's off the track. And that's what you have here. And that's what I've been saying for the last 5 to 10 years. State law specifies a number of things about how the commission is to be staffed and operated. For example, it spells out how commissioners must be appointed, the requirement for bipartisanship, and how many meetings they're required to have annually. The law also specifies several duties that both the commission and its executive director have. That includes things like assisting state agencies, efforts to serve the needs of African Americans in such areas as education, health, and housing, evaluating programs, and proposed legislation that affect African Americans, and carrying out public education programs. None of that is being done. That's all in the state statute, sir. You know, we selected a total of 9 requirements related to the commission's meeting and staffing requirement. We also reviewed whether the commission and the director completed functions and outlined in statute. Figure 2 shows the requirements we chose to review. The commission did not comply with 2 of 6 meeting-related duties outlined in law or bylaws in the time frame that we reviewed. So, you see, all in all, sir, what this report shows, and I've said this before, and they've said that I didn't know what I was talking about, but this audit shows that, and the reason I use the word dysfunctional, because of the fact it clearly shows here in the audit, and they spell it out, that the commissioners do not really know what they're supposed to be doing, nor does the executive director. For example, the executive director was not sharing any financial information with the commissioners. When questioned by the auditors, she said, well, they never asked for it. Look, a 10-year-old kid knows, that if you're heading up a commission and you're the executive, it's your duty and your responsibility to compile that information and share it with your commissioners. You see, this commissioner does not understand, and I think either the commissioners neither understand this executive director is not a voting member. She is an administrative executive. That's what her function is supposed to be. Those are what her duties are. It's the commissioners who are supposed to be telling her what they want done, and it's her job to carry it out. And neither one of them know, the commissioners don't know that that's their job. They look forward to the executive director, and she doesn't know that she is not a voting member, and she represents herself as a commissioner. So you've got to, you got everything, excuse the expression, but ass backwards, and so therefore, this is, as I stated before, what we have here in Kansas is like an airplane when it's losing the altitude and it's going straight down, okay, nose down, and you don't have anybody on board that knows how to correct it and get the altitude, get it back up the altitude so it will fly as it's supposed to. So basically, it's going to crash and burn at some point in time, and that time is very soon. So I have to ask you, sir, again, if you were advising, and we won't even say this group, but if you were advising, let's say a state had a newly formed African American Affairs Commission, would you advise them, sir, to stand by the state statute and follow the state statute, which is the law, or would you advise them to go out there and do things on a trial and error basis, hoping that you can find something that works?
Well, first of all, when the state statute was proposed and developed and passed in 1997, you had a lot more in terms of resources and funding and individuals. Like you mentioned, there were at least 3 staff members. They had a long list of things which are still there in terms of tasks and assignments. I think it's 11 things they're supposed to be doing. When you reduce it, more than half, you're not going to get the same outputs because there's just not enough resources for people to make sure those kinds of things happen. So, to answer your question, if they had to redo it again, I would urge someone or whoever's involved to really take a real serious look, an educated look at what is doable. I did not see it certainly wouldn't be in the audit because they didn't talk about it. That wasn't part of their assignment, but I looked in the on the website to try to determine how priorities are established during the course of a year. What are your goals? What things are achievable? What things cannot be done because of the resources that are available? There seemed to be no plan, no work plan for the year or for semi-year or whatever. So that would be important. Having a lot of tasks listed and really no way of reaching those goals or dealing with those objectives just doesn't make any sense. you gotta limit what's required and do effective job on those kinds of things. And if there's opportunities to add more things to the list, then do that. But having a large list and only 7 people to maintain the committees just doesn't, just not practical. And I saw in the minutes where some commissioners were in charge of 2 or 3 committees. That's very difficult to do. There didn't seem to be any kind of plan that would offer outside resources, establishing committees where, let's say, people from the community could be part of those committees to advance the work that's there. So those kind of things, those are structural things that need to be in place if you're going to do that. If you're going to start over again, if you're going to change the shape or the mission of the organization, of the commission, and those kind of things have to be figured out and determined and decided upon and put as a work plan. So that's my response to how that needs to be done.
Okay, let me just correct you on one issue here.
Sure.
What you saw in the minutes, and this report will basically confirm that what you saw in the minutes, they don't have, even as we speak now, they don't have any subcommittees.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is there were individuals, commissioners, who were tasked with certain parts of the assignment. I think I saw one who's going to be in charge of treasurer, outreach, those kind of things. They were named there, but I didn't see anything that said what they did at the following meeting. I think after the audit was published, they made the decision to assign people different tasks or the list. But after that, I didn't see anything that went on. But there were people named to do this. It didn't make sense to me that could be done.
Yeah, you see, the problem is after this audit, they were supposed to, as a result of a recommendation from the audit committee, it was recommended that they set up some subcommissions. Okay, they don't have any.
Well,
right?
I saw in the minutes that they were assigned, but again, I didn't see anything after that.
But the other thing, when we talk about resources, sir, I fully understand what you're saying. $110,000 is not enough resources to be able to really accomplish anything. Here's the problem that I have. The governor, as we speak, is sitting on a budget surplus of over $2 billion. Now, if the governor really cared or gave a damn about how African Americans in the state of Kansas were being treated or the conditions that they're living under, she wanted to improve those. Well, she could very easily supply $500,000 if necessary to make this commission effective and efficient and provide some benefits to enhance the lifestyle of every African American in the state of Kansas. But they're not doing that. Now, says state law authorizes the commission to conduct activities in 11 areas. Yeah. And we saw evidence of activity relating to about half of those. All right. The law gives the commission 11 functions, powers, and duties. These include things like coordinating and assisting state agencies with education, employment, housing, and several other types of services to African Americans. They also authorize to evaluate existing programs and propose legislation that affect African Americans. The full list of powers and duties is evaluated, shown in Figure 2. The commission conducted activities in fiscal years 22 and 23 that are related to 5 of these areas. For example, the commission held 2 town hall meetings in Wichita. Now, actually, there was only one that was an official town hall meeting. They've not conducted 2 town hall meetings in the last 14 years, all right? The commission didn't conduct activities in 6 of those areas in 2022 or 23. For example, we didn't see evidence of activities to either propose new programs concerning African Americans or to conduct training programs for community leadership and service project staff. So, I mean, it's clearly they're showing here that clearly these people or not doing the duties and carrying out the responsibilities that are provided for in state statute 74-9905. Now here's another one. The commissioners who responded to our survey generally had positive reviews of the executive director's performance, but some thought she wasn't effective or responsive as she should be. Now that's very telling right there. When your own commissioners don't have the confidence in you that they should have, don't have the confidence in your abilities and capabilities and effectiveness like they should have. That right there says something is wrong. Now, due to time constraints, sir, I'm going to kind of run through these a little briefly here. Okay, here's one that is very important. The distinction between the role of the director and the commissioners is unclear. There appears to be a blurred understanding on who, the director or commissioners, is responsible for deciding on and conducting specific activities. Statute defines the executive director as an administrative officer who must serve the commission. However, both the director and the commissioners view the director as having a more active decision role making or decision making role. For example, in our interviews, the director told us she is responsible for carrying out the majority of the commission's activities. Therein lies a big part of the problem. She said she initiated a number of social media activities and was instrumental in starting up lunch and learn meetings and other new activities. She stated she is the only paid person and she was not comfortable asking commissioners to do these things as volunteers. That's what they signed up for. And talking about these lunch and learns, I mean, this is a 30-minute program that they do once a week. And they've done about 59 of them so far. Now, out of these lunch and learns, which is similar to a podcast, they have never one time had 100 viewers for any of those 59 lunch and learn programs. And when I think about lunch and learn, the first thing that comes to my mind is some kind of a food program. All right. So I don't know how many people feel the same way, but the average of this 59, sir, is about 15 views per episode. Now, since this audit was done, they've done 3 lunch and learns. Not a single one of those lunch and learns since this audit have been able to have 10 viewers. One had 7, one had 9, and I believe one maybe did 10. But that's it, sir. That is not a successful program. I don't care what name you give it. That is not a successful program. There is no outreach. It has no benefit to the African American Affairs Commissions, African Americans in the state. And part of the reason is because in those lunch and learn, they never, not a single one of them, talks about what the African American Affairs Commission has done, is doing, or plans to do. And when you talk a while ago about a plan, so you not only do you have to have a plan, you have to have a vision for where you want to take this organization. And there is no vision coming forth from the executive director, none of the commissioners, nor the governor, nor the chief of staff, nor the secretary of appointments. None of them offer no vision. They're just out there by trial and error, and 98% of what they're doing is error. And so, this kind of sums it up. In effect, like I said, sir, you simply have a dysfunctional commission and an executive director. And basically, as you said, when you read the minutes, I don't see anything in there that shows me that it's going to get any better. Because the fact that nobody knows what the hell they're supposed to be doing, and if you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, the chances are that you're not going to do it. They're going to do anything. So there you have it. And like I said, I told you I didn't want to keep you over 40 minutes, and we're fast approaching that. But I just want to, would you just take a minute, if you could, and I know you didn't know I was going to ask you this, but what advice would you have for, I'm going to say the executive director here, to change the course of this ship?
Well,
And don't say resign. I've already said that.
no, 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 I would not say that. I would say that executive director should speak to other people who have had experiences with commissions and get an idea of the kinds of things that kinds of challenges and kinds of objectives and outcomes that you would want to get out of a commission and what the role should be and how it could be shaped. And speak to and understand from the legislature, whether it's a caucus or others, what they feel it should happen. Now, I understand that there are other commissions. I don't know where they stand, but it would probably be advisable to find out what they're doing and how they're doing, and if they have the same kinds of frustrations. If they have the same kind of problems, then maybe they need to get together and approach someone in authority or some group that can help them move it along. But getting information and not working in a silo, I think would be helpful for the executive director and perhaps even the commissioners there to get some input and some ideas of what can be done and how it can be done in Kansas. It's challenging, but the need is there because we see that there's a regression in terms of what's happening to people of color around the country. The things that the pendulum is turning, and we need to work together to try to change that, because otherwise, we'll lose our rights, we'll lose our opportunities. So it's important work. It's work that needs to be taken seriously and done well. So that would be my advice: to develop a plan, talk to others, talk to both people inside the state and outside the state who've had experiences in this area, and get some dialogue and get some ideas to how things could happen and how to get to that goal. I would be more than willing to talk to folks there, as you know. So those are the things I would say. Don't give it up, but really get some outside help if folks on the inside aren't really providing that kind of information.
Well, I think that's very good advice, sir. And I would just add to that, ask the governor for some money. This is like anything. You can't do anything without money. All right. And that's the name of the game.
And just like any other elected official, when you ask for money, you better have a plan on how that money is going to be used. Yes. I would really map out a plan, a strategic plan of how things could be done and how you can attach dollars to it, so you have a plan and some accountability. Going in and just asking for money without having understanding how it's going to be spent is foolish. You really need to have a really strong plan as how funding would be used. Having $500,000 would be ideal, but really state out how that's going to happen, what kind of outputs and performances that will be there as a result of it. People nowadays, even if you have a surplus, they want to know how it's going to be used. So that's my advice.
And that's very good information. And I'll wrap this up by saying this: the state of New Mexico has an African American population that is less than half. Actually, it's about probably 30% of what the state of Kansas has. And they have an annual budget, sir, of $800,000 plus. Okay. And they have about 8 employees. That's the way you do this if you want to do it correctly and effectively. To do it without any resources, without any employees, without any resources, you just, I don't want to use the word, but that's the way. So listen, let me wrap this up, sir. I promise you I wouldn't keep you. So listen, and once again, I want to say I really thank you, sir, for taking the time to visit with me. And I absolutely mean it, sir, when I tell you that I have much appreciation for your experience, your knowledge, and your expertise. And I only wish that this African American Affairs Commission, this governor, and this chief of staff would have taken avail of your expertise and your knowledge. but they don't want to hear from people with knowledge, which tells me they don't want it to be successful. So anyhow, sir, thank you very much, and I appreciate it.
You're very
And
welcome.
hopefully we'll talk again.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
And let me say before I go, ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you about the best kept secret in Wichita, and that is LaCherre Nicole's Cheesecake Boutique. Now, I want to tell you, I've been there, and I hear a lot of people talking about we don't have a cheesecake factory, but you're really, really missing out if you don't take advantage of LaCherre Nicole's Cheesecake Boutique. It's located in the Plaza Village at 13th and Woodlawn. It's on the west end of the shopping center there. I'm telling you, I've tasted it. It's one of the best cheesecakes I've ever tasted in my life, and it comes in many different flavors. They also have full cheesecake pies with cherries on top. They've got cups, cheesecake cups in several different varieties, and we'll talk more about that in the coming weeks. But I'm just telling you, if you haven't been there, you're missing out on a real treat. Try it. I guarantee you won't regret it. Okay, that's our show for today. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.